Sí, soy de Dublín. Okay, just know me about 3:30. I'm gonna go out and have the other half of that cigarette and just.
You know the way I love how I say 3:30.
The reason for that is that the thing
I like to talk with the link.
the reason for that is that the two groups and that's why
I love that.
but that's where it's physically so that comes in there. Romy Ellis,
So you didn't do that Bloomsday last year?
no, we will next year.
And you know, it's not the roads and Granada.
Oh, did they have social
And the texts were absolutely amazing. The texts are going to read.
so that it would. You will get you want to meet me?
Oh my goodness.
I will be 1 minute.
Te voy a molestar otra vez para eso.
No, espérate. Si cuando yo hago algo, estoy tocando micro, ¿va o no va? One, two, one, two, one, two, one, two.
Voy a poner...
Dos cámaras.
Esta edición sí me parece bien aquí. Que es la que me regaló Jorge, que es la original. ¿Qué?
Soy muy vergonzudo poniéndome cosas.
De verdad te lo digo. Bueno, pues ya está.
Cosas te lo digo.
Are we good to go? Hello, good afternoon, greetings and welcome to Daly's. Daly's the Cobblestone, Granada. Glad you could all make it for the afternoon. There's probably better things you could be doing. Having a siesta would be number one on my list. But here we go. We're marking Bloomsday to celebrate the works of James Joyce. For me, James Joyce brings Dublin to life. The section that I'll be reading from mentions a pub, the City Arms, where there's a meeting with the cattlemen. The City Arms is about 300 metres from the house I grew up in, and it was set into Dublin's cattle market, which became defunct, I think, about 1974, 75. And I remember the place because when we were kids, we used to just hang out there in the cattle market, and I spent many evenings in the City Arms with my father. I should just mention it's Father's Day today. This is the first Father's Day that I won't be able to send my dad a message or give him a call. And this place wouldn't be possible without my father, Tom. I mean, Joyce captures the chat. The thing about pubs in Dublin is that you'll hear the most witty, intelligent conversation, and you'll also hear the greatest loads of rubbish out of people. And I think Joyce captures both of those aspects. Yeah, I mean, just one part of that you see quite a lot within the reading is this habit of says I or says he. When a Dublin person, I'm not sure how much it goes on outside of Dublin, but when you're telling a story, you'll say, for example, you'll say, I met Jorge in the pub last night and he told me that Ellie's father wasn't too well, for example. In Dublin speak, that's, I ran into Jorge and says he to me, Ellie's father's not doing too well. Says I to him, you should do this or you should do that. And again, the conversation in Joyce captures that wonderfully. Without me rambling on too much, I will hand you over to Pilar, who will give us a bit of an introduction. Pilar.
Well, thank you, Steve. I don't know what to say as an introduction, actually. But just to say that I am coming on behalf of a big group of people from the University of Granada. We are currently at the Circle of Irish Studies at the university. We are more than 30 people working on Irish studies from various disciplines: archaeology, history, music, philology, language, literature. And from the very beginning, we have been collaborating closely with Steve at the pub. And what we can say is that we have really developed throughout all these years a very close friendship. We admire each other a lot. Steve is an unusual owner of a pub because he really puts himself a lot in everything that he does. He's supporting us in every single aspect. All the academic events, we close them over here in the pub, and we can say that Daly's has become a referent pub, Irish pub in the city. So we are so glad that, he couldn't be more generous than he is with all of us at the University of Granada. So we are simply pleased to be collaborating with him. I would also like to acknowledge the participation of Robert and Kamel, who have helped Steve in organizing Bloomsday. Thanks so much to them, and let's get Bloomsday. And we hope that this is not the first time that we are doing it here, and thanks a million, Steve.
The reading, it's from chapter 12, Cyclops. Appropriate enough. a lot of it is set in a pub. Without further ado. "Are you a strict TT, says Joe. "Not taking anything between drinks, says I. "What about paying our respects to our friend, says Joe. "Who?" says I. "Sure, he's in John of God's, he's off his head, poor man. Drinking his own stuff, says Joe. "Ah," says I, "whiskey and water on the brain." "Come around to Barney Kieran," says Joe. "I want to see the citizen." "Barney before names be it," says I. "Anything strange or wonderful, Joe?" "Not a word," says Joe. "I was up at that meeting in the City Arms." "What was that?" says Joe. "What was that, Joe?" says I. "Cattle traders," says Joe. "About the foot and mouth disease. I want to give the citizen the hard word about it." So we went round by the Linen Hall barracks and the back of the courthouse, talking one thing or another. Decent fella Joe, and he has it, but sure like that, he never has it. Jesus, I couldn't get over that bloody foxy Geraghty, the daylight robber, for trading without a licence, is he. So we turned into Barney Kiernan's, and there, sure enough, was the citizen up in the corner having a great confab with himself and that bloody mangy mongrel Gary Owen, and he waiting for what the sky had dropped in the way of a drink. "There he is," says I, "in his glory hole with his Krushki and lawn and his load of papers, working for the cause." The bloody mongrel let out a grouse of him would give you the creeps. Be a corporal work of mercy if someone would take the life of that bloody dog. I'm told for a fact he ate a good part of the breeches off a constabulary man in Santry that came round one time with a blue paper about a licence. "Stand and deliver," says he. "That's all right, citizen," says Joe. "Friends here, past friends," says he. Then he rubs his hand in his eye and says he, "What's your opinion of the times?" Doing the rapparee and rory of the hill, but begob Joe was equal to the occasion. "I think the markets are on a rise," says he, sliding his hand down his fork. So begob, the citizen claps his paw on his knee and he says, "Foreign wars is the cause of it." "And," says Joe, sticking his thumb in his pocket, "it's the Russians wish to tyrannise." "Give over your bloody cotton, Joe," says I. "If it wasn't me, I wouldn't sell for £0.50. "Give it a name, citizen," says Joe. "Wine of the country," says he. "Ditto Macanaspy," says I. "3 pints, Terry," says Joe. "How's the old heart, citizen?" says he. "Never better a chorra." "What, Gary? Are we going to win, eh?" And with that, he took the bloody old Towser by the scruff of the neck, and by Jesus, he nearly throttled him. So anyway, Terry brought the 3 pints Joe was standing, and begob, the sight nearly left me eyes when I saw him land out £1. True as I'm telling you, a good looking sovereign. "And there's more where that come from," says he. "Were you robbing the poor box, Joe?" says I. "Sweating me brow," says Joe. "'Twas the prudent member gave me the wheeze. I saw him before we were met, Joe," says I. Sloping round by Pill Lane and Greek Street with his cod's eye counting up the guts of all the fish.
Old Gary Owen started growling again at Bloom that was sheathing round the door. Come on, he wanted you," said the citizen. So Bloom slobs in with his cod's eye and the dog, and he asked Terry, "Was Martin Cunningham there?" "Oh, cried McKeon," says Joe, reading one of the letters. "Listen to this, will ya?" And he starts reading out of 7 Hunter Street, Liverpool, to the High Sheriff of Dublin. "Honour, sir, I beg to offer my services in the above-mentioned purple case. I hanged Joe again in Borough Jail on the 12th of February 1900, and I hanged..." "Show us," Joe says I. Private Arthur Chase for foul murder of Chesley Tilsett in Pentonville Prison, and I was assistant when..." "Jesus," says I. "Billington executed the awful murderer, Toad Smith." The citizen made a grab at the letter. "Whole heart," says Joe. "I have a special knack of putting the news once in the can get out, hoping to be favoured and remain. Honour, sir, my term is 5 guineas. H. Rumble, Master Barber." "And the barber is bloody barbarian he is too," said the citizen. And the dirty scroll of the wretch, says Joe. Here, says he, take them to hell out of my sight of hello, Bloom, says he, what would you have? So they started arguing about the point. Bloom saying he wouldn't and couldn't and excuse him, no offense, and all to that end. And then he said, well, let's just take a cigar. Gob, as a prudent member of no mistake. Give us one of your prime stinkers, Jerry, says Joe. And Aunt was telling us there was one chap saying in a mourning card with a black border round it. They are all barbers, says he. From the black country, they would hand their own feathers for 5 quid down and travelling expenses. And he was telling us there's 2 fellows waiting below to pull his wheels down when he gets the drop and chop him properly, and then they chopped up the rope after and sell the bits for a few bob's call. In the dark land they hide, the vengeful knights of the razor, the deadly cold they grasp, yeah. And therein they lead terribles whatsoever right hand on a date of blood, for I will know why suffer it even so, saith the Lord. So they started talking about capital punishment, and of course, Bloom comes up with the why and the wherefore and all the codology of the business, and the old dog smelling him. All the time I'm told those chulas does have a sort of a queer other coming off than for dogs about. And I don't know what all deterrent effect and so forth and so on. There's one thing he hasn't a deterrent effect on, says Alf. What's that? Says Joe. The poor bugger's tool that's been hanged, says Alf. That's so, says Joe. God's truth, says Alf. I heard that from the head warder that was in Kilmanian when they hanged Joe Brady, the invincible. He told me when they cut him down after drop it was standing up in their faces like a poker. Well, in passion, strong in death, says Joe. As someone said. That can be explained by science, says Bloom. It's only a natural phenomenon, don't you see? Because on account of the... And then he starts with his jawbreakers about phenomenon and science and this phenomenon and the other phenomenon. So of course the citizen was only waiting for the wink of the word, and he starts gassing out of him about the invincibles and the old guard and the men of 67, and who fears to speak of 98 and Joe within, about all the fellows that were hanged, drawn, and transported for the cause by Drannet Commercial and in New Ireland. I knew these, that, and the other. Talking about New Ireland, he ought to go and get a new dog, so he ought. Mangy, ravenous, bruised, sniffling, squeezing all round the place, and scratching his calves, and round he goes to Rob Doran, that was standing off. I have one sucking up for what he could get. So of course Bob Doran started doing the bloody fool with him. Give us the paw, give the paw, doggy. Good old doggy, give us the paw, here, give us the paw. Hurrah. Bloody end to the paw, he put off trying to keep him from tumbling up the bloody stool of perch of the bloody old dog, and he talking all kinds of dribble, but training by kindness, and thoroughbred dog, an intelligent dog, give you the bloody pip. Then he starts crapping a few bits of old baskets out of a button of a Jacobson he told Terry to bring. God, he galloped it down like old boots, and his tongue hanging out of in a yardlum for more. Near 8 to 10 and all. Hungry, bloody mongrel. And the citizen and Bloom having an argument about the point. The brothers Sheard and Wolfton Beyond on Arbor Hill, and Robert Emmett, and Die for Your Country, the Tommy Moore touch about Sarah Curran, and she's far from the land. And Bloom, of course. It has knocked me down cigar, putting on swunk with his lardy face. Phenomenon. The far hippier married is a nice old phenomenon with a back on it like a ballaby. Time there was doping up in the city Arms Petersburg. Told me there was an old one there with a cracked Luther Ramon of a nephew. And Bloom trying to get the soft side of her doing the mollycoddle, playing basic to calm him for a bit of the wampum in her will, and not eating meat of a Friday, because the old one was always thumping her crow and taking the louder for a walk. And one time he led in the rounds of Dublin, and by the holy farmer, he never cracked he had brought him home as drunk as a bold owl, and he said he did it to teach him the evils of alcohol. And by herrings, if the three women didn't near roast him, it's a queer story, the old one. Bloom's wife and Mr. O'Dowd that kept the hotel. Jesus, I had to laugh at Petersburg taking the off chewing the fat and Bloom with his butt. But don't you see? But on the other hand, and sure, more betoken, that Laurent Toul was in Powers after the blenders, running Cobb Street, going from Footless in a cab 5 times in the week, after drinking his way through all these samples in the blood establishment. Phenomenon. The memory of the dead, says the citizen, taking up his pint glass and glaring at Bloom. Aye, aye, says Joe. You don't grasp my point, said Bloom. What I mean is, Sinn Féin, says the citizen. Sinn Féin and him, the friends we love and by our side, the foes we hate before us.
So then the citizens begin talking about the Irish language and the corporation meeting and all to that and the Shawneens that can't speak their own language and Joe chipping in because he stuck someone for a quid and Bloom putting in his old goo with his tuppenny stump that he cadged off Joe and talking about the Gaelic League and the Anti-Treating League and drink, the curse of Ireland. Anti-treating is about the size of it. Gob, he'd let you pour all manner of drink down his throat till the Lord would call him before you'd ever see the froth of his pint. And one night I went in with a fellow into one of their musical evenings. Song and dance about she could get up on a truss of hay, she could, my Maureen lay. And there was a fella with a ballyhooly blue ribbon badge, spiffing out of him in Irish, and a lot of Colleen Bawns going about with temperance badges, and selling beverages, medals and oranges and lemonade, and a few old dry buns. Gob, flahoola entertainment. Don't be talking. Ireland sober is Ireland free. And then an old fella starts blowing into his bagpipes, and all the gougers shuffling their feet to the tune the old cow died of. And 1 or 2 sky pilots having an eye around that there was no goings on with that females hitting below the belt. So how and forever, as I was saying, the old dog, seeing the tin was empty, starts mousing around by Joe and me. I'd train him by kindness, so I would, if he was my dog, give him a rousing fine kick, now and again, where it wouldn't blind him. Afraid he'll bite you, said the citizen, sneering. No, says I, but he might take my leg for a lamppost. So he calls the old dog over. What's on you, Gary? Says he. Then he starts hauling and mauling and talking to him in Irish, and the old tows are growling, letting on to answer like a duet in the opera. Such growling you never heard, as they let off between them. Someone that has nothing better to do ought to write a letter, pro bono publico, to the papers about all that muzzling order for a dog, the like of that. Growling and grousing, and his eye all bloodshot from the drought is in it, and the hydrophobia dropping out of his jaws. All those who are interested in the spread of human culture among the lower animals, and their name is Legion, should make a point of not missing the really marvellous exhibition of synanthropy given by the famous old Irish red wolf dog setter, formerly known by the sobriquet of Gary Owen, and recently rechristened by his large circle of friends and acquaintances, Owen Gary. The exhibition, which is the result of years of training by kindness and a carefully thought out dietary system, comprises, among other achievements, the recitation of verse, our greatest living phonetic expert, wild horses shall not drag it from us, has left no stone unturned in his efforts to delucidate and compare the verse recited, and has found it bears a striking resemblance, the italics are ours, to the rams of ancient Celtic bards. We are not speaking so much of those delightful love songs with which the writer who conceals his identity under the graceful pseudonym of Little Sweet Branch has familiarized the book-loving world, but rather, as a contributor, D.O.C. points out in an interesting communication published by an evening contemporary, of the harsher and more personal note which is found in the satirical effusions of the famous Raftery and of Donald McConsidine, to say nothing of a more modern lyricist, at present very much in the public eye. We subjoin a specimen which is rendered into English by an eminent scholar whose name, for the moment, we are not at liberty to disclose more, though we believe our readers will find the topical allusion rather more than an indication. The metrical system of the canine original, which recalls the intricate alliterative and isosyllabic rules of the Welsh Englian, is infinitely more complicated, but we believe our readers will agree that the spirit has been well caught. Perhaps it should be added that the effect is greatly increased if Owen's verse be spoken somewhat slowly and indistinctly in a tone suggestive of suppressed rancour. The curse of my curses, 7 days every day, and 7 dry Thursdays on you, Barney Kiernan, has no sup of water to cool my courage, and my guts red roaring after Lowry's lights. So he told Terry to bring some water for the dog, and Gob, you could hear him lapping it up a mile off. And Joe asked him, would he have another? I will, says he, a chara, to show no ill feeling.
So he brought the 3 pints. Here, says Joe, doing the honours. Here, citizen, slan lat, says he. Fortune, Joe, says I. Good health, citizen. God, he had his mouth halfway down the tumbler already. Want a small fortune to keep him in drinks. Who's the long fella running for the mayoralty, Alf? Says Joe. Friend of yours, says Alf. Mannon, says Joe, the member. I wouldn't mention any names, says Alf. And I thought so, says Joe. I saw him up at the meeting now with William Field, MP, the cattle traders. Harry Lopez, says the citizen, that exploded volcano, the darling of all countries and the idol of his own. So Joe starts telling the citizen about the foot and mouth disease and the cattle traders and taking action in the matter, and the citizens sending them all to the roundabout, and Bloom coming out with his sheep dip for the scab and a hoose drench for the coughing calves and the guaranteed remedy for Timberton. Because he was up one time in Knacker's yard, walking about with his book and pencil, here's me head and me heels, a-coming till Joe Cuff gave him the order of the boot for giving lip to a grazier, Mr. Knowall. Teach your grandmother how to milk ducks. Pisser Burke was telling me, in the hotel, the wife used to be in rivers of tears sometimes with Mrs. O'Dowd, crying her eyes out with her 8 inches of fat all over her, couldn't loosen her farting strings, but old Cod's eye was waltzing around her, showing her how to do it. What's your programme today? Aye, humane methods, because the poor animals suffer. And experts say I'm the best known remedy that doesn't cause pain to the animal, and on the sore spot, administer gently. God, we'd have a soft hand under a hen. Ga-ga-ga-ra, look. Black Liz is our hen. She lays eggs for us. When she lays her egg, she is so glad. Look. Then comes good Uncle Leo. He puts his hand under Black Liz and takes a fresh egg. Ga-ga-ga-ga-ra, look. Anyhow, says Joe, Field and Nannetti are going over to London tonight to ask about it on the floor of the House of Commons. Are you sure, says Bloom? The councillor is going. I wanted to see him. As it happens, well, he's going off by mailboat, says Joe, tonight. That's too bad, says Bloom. I wanted particularly. Perhaps only Mr. Field is going. I couldn't phone. No? You sure? Nannon's going too, says Joe. The League told him to ask a question tomorrow about the Commissioner of Police forbidding Irish games in the park. What do you think of that, citizen? The Shlew and a Heron. Mr. Carl Conacher, multi-Farnham nationalist, Arising out of the question of my honourable friend, the member for Shillelagh, may I ask the right honourable gentleman whether the government has issued orders that these animals should be slaughtered, though no medical evidence is forthcoming as to their pathological condition? Mr. Allforce, Tam O'Shant, Conservative. Honourable members are already in possession of the evidence produced before a committee of the whole House of Commons. I feel I cannot usefully add anything to that. The answer to the honourable member's question is in the affirmative. Mr. Orelli, Montenotti, Nationalist. Have similar orders been issued for the slaughter of human animals who dare to play Irish games in the Phoenix Park? Mr. Allforce, the answer is in the negative. Mr. Cow Conacher, has the right honourable gentleman's famous Mitchelstown telegram inspired the policy of gentlemen on the Treasury bench? Oh, Mr. Allforce, I must have notice of that question. Mr. Stalywit, Buncombe, Independent, don't hesitate to shoot them. Ironical opposition cheers. The Speaker, order, order. House rises, cheering. There's the man, says Joe, that made the Gaelic sports revival. There he is sitting there, the man that got away, James Stephens, the champion of all Ireland, putting the 16-pound shot. What was your best throw, citizen? Nah, backlash, says the citizen, letting on to be modest. There was a time I was as good as the next fellow, anyhow. Put it there, citizen, says Joe. You were, and a bloody sight better. Is that really a fact, says Alf. Yes, says Bloom. That's well known. Do you not know that? So off they started about Irish sport, and shireen games the like of the lawn tennis, and about Hurley putting the stone and racing of the soil and building up the nation once again, and all of that. And of course Bloom had to have his say too. I doubt if a fella had a rower's heart, violent exercise was bad. I declared to my Auntie Macassar, if you took up a straw from the bloody floor, and if you said to Bloom, look at it, you see that straw? That's a straw. I declared to my aunt, he talked about it for an hour. So he would. Talk steady. Thank you.
Hello everybody, this is the first time I speak into a mic, so I apologize if there's some weird noises coming from this side. Like that one.
The mic has some misgivings, but...
Those are nice things, says the citizen, coming over here to Ireland, filling the country with bugs. So Bloom lets on he heard nothing, and he starts talking with Joe, telling him he needn't trouble about that little matter till the first, but if he would just say a word to Mr. Crawford. And so Joe swore high and holy by this and by that, he'd do the devil and all. Because you see, Mr. Bloom, for an advertisement you must have repetition. That's the whole secret. Rely on me, says Joe. Swindling the peasant, says the citizen, the poor of Ireland. We want no more strangers in our house. Oh, I'm sure that will be all right, mind, says Bloom. It's just at Keys, you see. Consider that done, says Joe. Very kind of you, says Bloom. The strangers, says the citizens, our own fault. We let them come in, we brought them, the adulteress and her paramour brought by the Saxon robbers here. Decree nisi, says JJ. And Bloom letting on to be awfully deeply interested in nothing, the spider's web in the corner behind the barrel, and the citizens scowling after him, and the old dog at his feet looking up to know who to bite and when. A dishonored wife, says the citizen, that's what's the cause of all our misfortunes. And there she is, says Alf, that was giggling all over the police gazette with Terry on the counter in all her war paint. Give us a squint at her, says I. And what was it? Only one of the smutty Yankee pictures Terry borrowed off of Courtney Keller. Her secrets for enlarging your private parts. Misconduct of Society Bell. Norman W. Tupper, wealthy Chicago contractor, finds pretty but faithless wife in lap of Officer Taylor. Bell in her bloomers misconducting herself and her fancy man feeling for her tickles, and Norman W. Tupper bouncing in with his pea shooter just in time to be late after she was doing the trick of the loop with Officer Taylor. Oh, Jakers, Jenny, says Joe, how short your shirt is. There's hair, Joe, says I. Get a queer old tail end of corned beef off of that one. What? So anyhow, In came John, Wise, Nolan, and Lenehan with him, with a face on him as long as late breakfast. Well, says the citizen, what's the latest from the scene of action? What did those tinkers in City Hall at their caucus meeting decide about the Irish language? O'Nolan, clad in shining armor, low bending, made of his... some words I can't say, so I just point.
Obeisance.
Now I'm lost. Okay. Obeisance to the
Puissant.
and high and mighty chief of all Erin, and did him to wit of that which had befallen, how that the grave elders of the most obedient city, second of the realm, had met them in the Thassel, and there, after due prayers to the gods who dwell in ether supernal, had taken solemn counsel whereby they might, if so be it might be, bring once more into honor among mortal men the winged speech of the sea-divided gale. It's on the march, says the citizen, to hell with the bloody brutal Sassenachs and their patois. So JJ puts in a word doing the toff about one story was good till you heard another, and blinking facts, and the Nelson policy, putting your blind eye to the telescope and drawing up a bill of attainder to impeach a nation, and Bloom trying to back him up, moderation and botheration, and their colonies and their civilization. Their civilization, you mean, says the citizen. To hell with them. The curse of the good for nothing. God lights sideways on the bloody, thick-logged sons of horse gets. No music and no art and no literature worthy of the name. Any civilization they have, they stole from us. Tongue-tied son of bastards' ghosts. The European family, says JJ. They're not European, says the citizen. I was in Europe with Kevin Egan of Paris. You wouldn't see a trace of their language anywhere in Europe except in a cabinet of... And says John Wise, full many a flower is born and blush unseen. And says Lenehan, that knows a bit of the lingo. Oof. He said, and then lifted he in his rude, great, brawny, strengthy hands the matter of dark, strong, foamy ale, and uttering his tribal slogan, Love
Dargaboo.
He drank to the undoing of his foes, a race of mighty, valorous heroes, rulers of the waves, who sit on the thrones of alabaster, silent as deathless gods. What's up with you, says I to Lenehan. You look like a fellow that had lost a bob and found a tanner. Gold cup, says he. Who won, Mr. Lenehan, says Terry. Throw away, says he. 20-1. He rank outsider, and the rest nowhere. A Bass's mare, says Terry. Still running, says he. We're all in a cart, Boylan. Plunged to quid on my tip scepter for himself and a lady friend. I had half a crown myself, says Terry, on Zinfandel that Mr. Flynn gave me. Lord Howard the Waldens. 20-1, says Lenehan. Such is life in an outhouse. Throw away, says he. Takes the biscuit and talking about bunions. Frailty, thy name is scepter. So he went to the biscuit tin, Bob Doran left to see if there was anything he could lift up on the nod. The old cur, after him, bagging his luck, with his mangy snout up. Old mothered Hubbard went to the cupboard. Not there, my child, says he. Keep your pecker up, says Joe. She'd have won the money only for the other dog. And JJ and the citizen arguing about law and history with Bloom sticking in an odd word. Some people, says Bloom, can see the mote in others' eyes, but they can't see the beam in their own.
Well, I'm afraid I'm going to be the only one who's going to be reading Joyce in Spanish, but I presume Joyce was universal, he's universal and multilingual, giving Finnegan's Wake, right? Thanks to Robert and Kamel for choosing the marvelous passage which speaks about Spain and Europe. in contemporary times as well. Romes, dice el ciudadano, no hay peor ciego que el que no quiere ver. Ya comprenden lo que quiero decir. ¿Dónde están los 20 millones de irlandeses que nos faltan? Los que debería haber hoy en vez de 4, nuestras tribus perdidas. ¿Y nuestra cerámica y textiles? Lo mejor de todo el mundo. ¿Y nuestra lana que se vendía en Roma en tiempos de Juvenal? ¿Y nuestro lino y nuestro damasco de los telares de Antrim? ¿Y nuestro encaje de Limerick? ¿Nuestras tenerías? ¿Y nuestro cristal blanco aquí en Ballyball? ¿Y nuestras popelín hugonote, que lo tenemos desde Jacquard de Lyon? ¿Y nuestra seda tejida? ¿Y nuestros paños de Foxford? ¿Y el punto en relieve de marfil? ¿Y el convento de carmelitas de New Ross, que no hay nada semejante en todo el mundo? ¿Dónde están los mercaderes griegos que venían cruzando las columnas de Hércules, ese Gibraltar hoy arrebatado por el enemigo de la humanidad, con oro y púrpura de Tiro para venderlo en Wexford, en la Feria del Carmen? Lean a Tácito, a Ptolomeo e incluso a Giraldus Cambrensis. Vinos, peletería, mármol de Connemara, plata de Tipperary, sin rival, nuestros caballos tan famosos hoy mismo, los caballitos irlandeses, con el rey Felipe de España ofreciendo pagar aduanas por el derecho de pesca en nuestras aguas. ¿Cuánto nos deben los amarillentos de Anglia por nuestro comercio arruinado y nuestros hogares arruinados? ¿Y los cauces de Barrow y el Shannon que no quieren ahondar con millones de acres de pantano y turbera para hacernos morir a todos de tisis? Tan sin árboles como Portugal estaremos pronto, dice John Wise, o como Heligoland con su único árbol, si no se hace algo para repoblar los bosques del país. Los alerces, los abetos, todos los árboles de la familia conífera están desapareciendo deprisa. Estaba leyendo yo un informe de Lord Castletown. ¡Salvadlos!, dice el ciudadano. El fresno gigante de Galway y el gran olmo de Kildare, con 40 pies de circunferencia y un acre de follaje. Salvad los árboles de Irlanda para los futuros hombres de Irlanda en las bellas colinas de Eire. Oh, Europa tiene los ojos puestos en nosotros, dice Lenehan. Y nuestros ojos están en Europa, dice el ciudadano. Teníamos nuestro comercio con España y los franceses y los flamencos, antes de que esos chuchos estuvieran destetados. Cerveza española en Galway, las barcazas de vino en el canal oscuro como vino, y volveremos a tenerlo, dice Joe. Y con la ayuda de la Santa Madre de Dios, volveremos a tenerlo, dice el ciudadano, palmeándose el muslo. Nuestros puertos, que están vacíos, volverán a estar llenos. Queenstown, Kinsale, Galway, Blacksod Bay, Bantry en el reino de Kerry, Killybegs, el tercer puerto del mundo en amplitud, con una flota de mástiles en los Lynch de Galway y los O'Reilly de Cavan y los O'Kennedy de Dublín, cuando el conde de Desmond podía hacer un tratado con el mismo emperador Carlos V. Y así volverá a ser, dice, cuando se vea el primer barco de guerra irlandés abriéndose paso por las olas con nuestra propia bandera enarbolada. Nada de esas arpas de Enrique Tudor. No, la más antigua bandera que haya navegado, la bandera de la provincia de Desmond y Thomond, 3 Coronas en campo azul, los tres hijos de Milesio.
Hear to that, says John Wise. What'll you have? An imperial yeomanry, says Lenihan, to celebrate the occasion. Half one, Terry, says John Wise, and hands up, Terry. Are you asleep? Yes, sir, says Terry. Small whisky and a bottle of Allsop. Right, sir? Hanging over the bloody paper with Alf, looking for spicy bits instead of attending to the general public. Picture of a butting match trying to crack their bloody skulls, one chap going for the other with his head down like a bull at a gate. And another one, Black Beast burned in Omaha, Georgia, a lot of deadwood dicks and slouch hats and firing at a sambo struck up in a tree with his tongue out and a bonfire under him. Cobb, they ought to drown him in the sea after and electrocute and crucify him to make sure of their job. But what about the fighting navy, says Ned, that keeps our foes at bay? I'll tell you what about it, says the citizen. Hell upon earth it is. Read the revelations that's going on in the papers about flogging on the training ships at Portsmouth. A fellow writes that calls himself Disgusted One. So he starts telling us about corporal punishment and about the crew of tars and officers and rear admirals drawn up in cocked hats and the parson with his Protestant Bible to witness punishment and a young lad brought out howling for his ma, and they tie him down on the butt end of a gun. A rump and dozen, says the citizen. That's what the old ruffian Sir John Beresford called it. But the modern God's Englishman calls it caning on the breech. And says John Wise, 'tis a custom more honoured in the breach than in the observance. Then he was telling us the master of arms comes along with a long cane and he draws out and he flogs the bloody backside off the poor lad till he yells, "Meal a murder." That's your glorious British Navy, says the citizen, that bosses the earth, the fellows that never will be slaves, with the only hereditary chamber on the face of God's earth, and their land in the hands of a dozen game hogs and cotton ball barons. That's the great empire they boast about of drudges and whipped serfs, on which the sun never rises, says Joe. And the tragedy of it, says the citizen, they believe it. The unfortunate yahoos believe it. They believe in Rod, the Scourger Almighty, creator of hell upon earth, and in Jackie Tar, the son of a gun, who was conceived of an unholy boast, born of the fighting navy, suffered under rump and dozen, was scarified, flayed and curried, yelled like bloody hell. The third day he rose again from the bed, steered into heaven, sitteth at the beam end till further orders, whence he shall come to drudge for a living and be paid. But, says Bloom, isn't discipline the same everywhere? I mean, wouldn't it be the same here if you put force against force? Didn't I tell you? As true as I'm drinking this porter, if he was at his last gasp, he'd try to downface you that dying was living. We'll put force against force, says the citizen. We have our greater Irelands beyond the sea. They were driven out of house and home in the Black 47. Their mud cabins and their sheilings by the roadside were laid low by the battering ram, and the Times rubbed its hands and told the white-livered Saxons there would soon be as few Irish in Ireland as Redskins in America. Even the Grand Turk sent us his piastres. But the Sassanach tried to starve the nation at home while the land was full of crops, and the British hyenas brought and sold in Rio de Janeiro. Aye, they drove out the peasants in hordes. 20,000 of them died in the coffin ships. But those that came to the land of the free, remembering the land of bondage. And they will come again, and with a vengeance, no cravens, the son of Granuela, the champions of Kathleen ni Houlihan. Perfectly true, says Bloom, but my point was, we are a long time waiting for that day, citizen, says Ned, since the poor old woman told us that the French were on the sea and landed at Killala. Aye, says John Wise, we fought for the royal Stuarts that reneged us against the Williamites, and they betrayed us. Remember Limerick and the broken treaty stone? We gave our best blood to France and Spain, the wild geese, Fontenoy, and Sarsfield, and O'Donnell, Duke of Tetuan in Spain, and Ulysses Brown of Camus, that was Field Marshal to Maria Theresa. But what did we ever get for it? The French, says the citizen, set of dancing masters. Do you know what it is? They were never worth a roasted fart to Ireland. Aren't they trying to make an entente cordiale now at Tepe's dinner party with perfidious Alban? Firebrands of Europe, and they always were. Spoil les Français, say Lenin, nobbling his beer. And as for the Prussians and Hanoverians, says Joe, haven't we had enough of those sausage-eating bastards on the throne, from George the Elector down to the German lad and the flatulent old bitch that's dead? Jesus, I had to laugh at the way he came out with that one about the old one, with the winkers on her blind drunk in her royal palace every night of God. Old Vic with her Joram of Mountain Dew and her coachman carting her up body and bones to roll into bed, and she pulling him by the whiskers and singing him old bits of song about Erin on the Rhine and come where the booze is cheaper. Well, says JJ, we have Edward the Peacemaker now. Tell that to a fool, says the citizen. There's a bloody sight more pox than pax about that boyo. Edward Gelf Vettin.
Bloom was talking and talking with John Wise, and he quite excited with his dum-duckety mud-coloured mug on him and his old plum eyes rolling about. Persecution, says he. All the history of the world is full of it, perpetuating national hatred among nations. But do you know what a nation means, says John Wise. Yeah, says Bloom. What is it, says John Wise. A nation, says Bloom. A nation is the same people living in the same place. By God then, says Ned, laughing. If that's so, I'm a nation, for I'm living in the same place the last 5 years. So of course, everyone had a laugh at Bloom, and says he's trying to muck out of it. Or also, living in different places. That covers my case, says Joe. What's your nation, if I may ask, says the citizen. Ireland, says Bloom. I was born here. Ireland. The citizen said nothing, only cleared the spit out of his gullet and gob. He spat a red bank oyster out of him right in the corner. After you with the push, says Joe. Taking out his handkerchief to swab himself dry. Here you are, citizen, says Joe. Take that in your right hand and repeat after me the following words. The much treasured and intricately embroidered ancient Irish face cloth attributed to Solomon Adroma and Manus Tumultuch O. MacDonagh, authors of the Book of Ballymote, was then carefully produced and called forth prolonged admiration. No need to dwell on the legendary beauty of the corner pieces, the acme of art, wherein one can distinctly discern each of the four evangelists in turn presenting each of the four masters his evangelical symbol, a bog oak sceptre, 8 North American puma, a far nobler king of beasts than the British article, be it said in passing, a kerry calf and a golden eagle from Carntool. The scenes depicted on the Emuntry field, showing our ancient duns and rats and cromlechs and greenawns and seats of learning and maledictive stones, are as wonderfully beautiful, and the pigments as delicate as when the Sligo illuminators gave free rein to their artistic fantasy long, long ago in the time of the Barmecides. Glendalough, the lovely lakes of Killarney, the ruins of Clonmacnoise, Cong Abbey, Glenina and the 12 Pins, Ireland's Eye, the green hills of Tala, Croagh Patrick, the brewery of Messrs Arthur Guinness Son and Company Limited, Loch Ness Banks, the Vale of Avoca, Isolde's Tower, the Mappus Obelisk, Sir Patrick Dunn's Hospital, Cape Clear, the Glenavahar Low, Lynch's Castle, the Scotch House, Rathdown Union Workhouse at Loughlinstown, Tullamore Jail, Castleconnell Rapids, Kilballymacshonaghill, the Cross at Monaster Boyce, Geordie's Hotel, St. Patrick's Purgatory, the Salmon Leap, Maynooth College Refectory, Corley's Hole, the Three Birthplaces, the First Duke of Wellington, the Rock of Cashel, the Bog of Allen, the Henry Street Warehouse, Fingal's Cave. All these moving scenes are still there for us today, rendered more beautiful still by the waters of sorrow which have passed over them, and by the rich incrustations of time. Shove us over the drink, says I. Which is which? That's mine, says Joe, as the devil said to the dead policeman. And I belong to a race too, says Bloom, that is hated and persecuted, also now, this very moment, this very instant. God, he near burnt his fingers with the butt of his old cigar. Robbed, says he, plundered, insulted, persecuted, taken what belongs to us by right. At this very moment, says he, putting up his fist, sold out by auction in Morocco like slaves or cattle. Are you talking about the New Jerusalem, says the citizen. I'm talking about injustice, says Bloom. Right, says John Wise. Stand up to it then, with force, like men. That's an almanac picture for you, marked for a soft-nosed bullet. Old lardy face, standing up to the business end of a gun. God, he'd adorn a Sweden bush, so he would, if he only had a nurse's apron on him. And then he collapses all of a sudden, twisting around all the opposite, as limp as a wet rag. It's no use, says he. Force, hatred, history, all of that. That's not life for men and women, insult and hatred. And everyone knows that it's the very opposite of that that is really life. What? Says Alf. Love, says Bloom. I mean the opposite of hatred. I must go now, says he to John Wise. Just round the court a moment to see if Martin's there. If he comes, just say I'll be back in a second. Just a moment. Who's hindering you? And off he pops like greased lightning.
I know where he's gone, says Lenihan, cracking his fingers. Who, says I? Bloom, says he. The courthouse is a blind. He had a few bob on throwaways and he's gone to gather in the shekels. Is it that wide-eyed Kaffir, says the citizen, that never backed a horse in anger in his life? That's where he's gone, said Lenihan. I met Bantam Lyons going to back that horse, only I put him off it, and he told me Bloom gave him the tip. Bet you what he like he has 100 shillings to 5 on. He's the only man in Dublin has it. A dark horse. He's a bloody dark horse himself, says Joe. Mind, Joe, says I. Shows the entrance out. There you are, says Terry. So in comes Martin, asking where was Bloom. Where is he, says Lenihan. Defrauding widows and orphans. Isn't that a fact, said John Wise. What I was telling the citizen about Bloom and the Sinn Féin. That's so, said Martin, or so they allege. Who made those allegations, said Alf. I, said Joe, I'm the alligator. And after all, says John Wise, why can't the Jew love his country like the next fellow? Why not, says JJ, when he's quite sure which country it is. Is he a Jew or a Gentile? Or a Holy Roman, or a swaddler, or what the hell is he, says Ned. Or who is he? No offence, Crofton. We don't want him, said Crofter, the Orange man, or Presbyterian. Who's Junius, says JJ. He's a perverted Jew, says Martin, from a place in Hungary, and it was he drew up all the plans according to the Hungarian system. We know that in the castle. Isn't he a cousin of Bloom, the dentist, says Jack Parr. Not at all, says Martin. Only namesakes. His name was Varag. The father's name that poisoned himself. He changed it by deed poll. The father did. That's the new Messiah for Ireland, says the citizen. Island of saints and sages. Well, they're still waiting for their Redeemer, says Martin. For that matter, so are we. Yes, says JJ. And every male that's born, they think it may be their Messiah. And every Jew is in a tall state of excitement, I believe, till he knows he's a father or a mother. Expecting every moment will be his next, says Lenihan. Oh, by God, said Ned. You should have seen Bloom before that son of his that died was born. I met him one day in the South City markets buying a tin of Neve's food 6 weeks before the wife was delivered. En ventre sa mère, says JJ. Do you call that a man? Said the citizen. I wonder, did he ever put it out of sight? Says Joe. Well, there were 2 children born anyhow, says Jack Power. And who does he suspect? Says the citizen. God, there's many a true word spoken in jest. One of those mixed middlings he is. Lying up in the hotel pisser was telling me once a month with headache like a toddy in her courses. Do you know what I'm telling you? It'd be like an act of God to take hold of a fellow like that and throw him in the bloody sea. Justifiable homicide, so it would. Then sloping off with his 5 quid without putting up a pint of stuff like a man. Give us your blessing, not as much as would blind your eye. Charity to the neighbour, said Martin. But where is he? We can't wait. A wolf in sheep's clothing, said the citizen. That's what he is, virag from Hungary, a Cyrus I call him, cursed by God. Have you time for a brief libation, Martin, says Ned. Only one, says Martin. We must be quick, JJ and S. You, Jack? Crofton? 3 half ones? Terry? St. Patrick would want to land again at Ballyconlar and convert us, says the citizen, after allowing things like that to contaminate our shores. Well, says Martin, dropping for the glasses, God bless all here is my prayer. Amen, says the citizen. And I'm sure he will, says Joe. I was just looking around to see who the happy thought would strike when be damned, but in he comes again, letting on to be in a hell of a hurry. Oh, I was just round at the courthouse, says he, looking for you, and I hope I'm not... No, Martin says, we're ready. Courthouse, my eye. And your pockets hanging down with gold and silver, mean bloody Scot. Stand as a drink. Stand as a drink, devil a sweet fear. There's a Jew for you. All for number 1. Cute as a shithouse rat, 100 to 5. Don't tell anyone, said the citizen. Beg your pardon, says he. Come on, boys, says Martin, seeing it was looking blue. Come along now. Don't tell anyone, says the citizen, letting a ball out of him. It's a secret. And the bloody dog woke up and let a growl. Bye-bye all, says Martin. And he got them out as quick as he could. Jack Power and Crofton, or whatever you call them. And in the middle of them, letting on to be all at sea up with them on the bloody jaunting car. Off with you, says Martin to the Jarvey. But begob, I was just lowering the heel of the pint when I saw the citizen getting up to waddle to the door, puffing and blowing with the dropsy, and he cursing the curse of Cromwell on them, bell, book and candle and Irish, spitting and spatting out of him, and Joe and little Alf round him like a leprechaun trying to peacify him. Let me alone, says he, and begob, he got as far as the door and they holding him, and he bawls out of him, 3 cheers for Israel! Hurrah! Sit down on the parliamentary side of your arse for Christ's sake, and don't be making a public exhibition of yourself. Jesus, there's always some bloody clown or other kicking up a bloody murder about bloody nothing. God, it'd turn the porter sour in your guts, so it would. And all the ragamuffins and sluts of the nation round the door, and Martin telling the Jarvey to drive ahead, and the citizen bawling, and Alf and Joe at him to whist, while he and his high horse about the Jews and the loafers calling for a speech, and Jack Parr trying to get him to sit down in the car and hold his bloody jaw, and a loafer with a patch over his eye starts singing The Man in the Moon was a Jew, 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 and the slut shouts out of her, "Hey, mister, your fly's open." And he says... Mendelssohn was a Jew, and Karl Marx and Mercadante and Spinoza, and your Saviour was a Jew, and his father was a Jew. You're God. He had no father, says Martin. That'll do now. Drive ahead. Who's God? Said the citizen. Well, his uncle was a Jew, says he. Your God was a Jew. Christ was a Jew like me. God, the citizen made a plunge back to the shop. But Jesus, says he, I'll brain that bloody Jew-man for using the holy name. But Jesus, I'll crucify him, so I will. Give us that bloody biscuit box here. Stop, stop, says Joe. God, the devil wouldn't stop until he got hold of the bloody tin anyhow, and out with him and little Alf hanging onto his elbow, and he shouting like a stuck pig, as good as any bloody play in the Queen's Royal Theatre. Where is he till I murder him? And Ned and JG paralysed with the laughing. Bloody wars, says I. I'll be in for the last gospel. But as luck would have it, and the Jarvey got the nag's head round the other way and off with them. Hold on, citizen, said Joe. Stop! Begob, he drew his hand and made a swipe and let fly. Mercy of God, the sun was in his eyes, or they've left him for dead. Gob, he near sent it into the County Longford. The bloody nag took fright, and the old mongrel after the car like bloody hell, and the populace shouting and laughing, and the old tin box clattering along the street. The catastrophe was terrific and instantaneous in its effect. The Observatory of Dunsilk registered in all 11 shocks all of the 5th grade of Mercalli scale, and there is no record extant of a similar seismic disturbance in our island since the earthquake of 1534, the year of the rebellion of Silk and Thomas. The epicentre appears to have been that part of the metropolis which constitutes the Inns Quay ward and parish of St Michan, covering a surface of 41 acres, 2 roods and 1 square pole or perch. You never saw the like of it in your born puff. God, if he got that lottery ticket on the side of the pole, he'd remember the gold cup, he would so. But by God, the citizen would have been lagged for assault and battery, and Joe for aiding and abetting. The Jarvey saved his life by furious driving, and as sure as God made Moses, what? Oh, Jesus, he did, and he let a volley of oaths after him. Did I kill him? Says he, or what? And he's shouting after the bloody dog, after him, Gary! After him, boy! And at last we saw the bloody car rounding the corner, an old sheep-face on it gesticulating, and the bloody mongrel after it with its lugs back with all his bloody well worth to tear him limb from limb. 100 to 5. Jesus, he took the value out of him, I promise you. When lo, there came about them all a great brightness, and they beheld the chariot wherein he stood ascend to heaven. And they beheld him in the chariot, clothed upon in the glory of the brightness, having raiment as of the sun, fair as the moon, and terrible, for all they durst not look upon him. And there came a voice from heaven calling, Elijah, Elijah. And he answered with a main cry, Abba Adonai. And they beheld him, even him, Ben Bloom Elijah, amid clouds of angels ascend to the glory of the brightness at an angle of 45 degrees over Donohue's in Little Green Street, like a shot of a shovel.
I love flowers. I love to have a whole place swimming in roses. God of heaven, there's nothing like nature. There were mountains and the sea and the waves rushing, then the beautiful country with fields of oats and wheat and all kinds of things and all the fine cattle going about. And would you do your heart good to see rivers and lakes and flowers, all sorts of shapes and smells and colours springing up even out of the ditches, primroses and violets. Nature it is. As for then saying there's no God, I wouldn't give a snap of my 2 fingers for all their learning. Why don't they go and create something? The sun shines for you, he said. We were lying among the rhododendrons and hotheads in the great tweed suits and the straw hats that they had been to propose to me. Yes, first I gave in the bush of Cyclops out of my mouth, and it was lipped here, but now, yes, 16 years ago, my God, after that long kiss, and I lost my breath. Yes, he said was a flower of the mountain. Yes. So we are flowers, all a woman's body. Yes. That was one true thing he said in his life. And the sun shines for you today. Yes. That's why I liked him. Because I saw he understood or felt what a woman is, and I knew I could always get round him and gave him all the pleasure I could, leading him up till he asked me to say yes. And I wouldn't answer. First only looks out over the sea and the sky. I was thinking of so many things he didn't know of, Molly and Mr. Stanhope and Hester and Father and old Captain Crows and the sailors playing. All birds fly. And I says, stoop on the washing of dishes, they called it, on the pier, and the sentry in front of the governor's house with the thing round his white helmet. Poor devil, half roasted, and the Spanish girl laughing in the shores, and there tall comes on the auction in the morning, the Greeks and the Jews and the Arabs, and those handsome Moors all in white and turbans like canes, asking you to sit down in their little bit of a shop, and Ronda with the old windows of the posadas, glancing eyes the lattice hid for her lover to kiss the iron, and the wine shops half open at nights, and the castanet, and the night we missed the boat at Algeciras, the watchman going about serene with his lamp, and oh, that awful deep down torrent, oh, and the sea crimson sometimes like fire, and the glorious sunsets, and the fig trees in the Alameda gardens, yes, and all the queer little streams in pink and blue and yellow houses, and the rose gardens, and the jasmines, and geraniums, and cactuses, and Gibraltars, as a girl, where I was a flower of the mountain. Yes, when I put the rose in my hair, like the Andalusian girls used, or shall I wear a red? Yes, and how he kissed me under the Moorish wall. And I thought, well, as well him as another, and then I asked him with my eyes to ask again, yes. And then he asked me, would I yes to say yes, my mountain flower? First, I put my arms around him, yes, drew him down to me so he could feel my breast all perfume, yes. And his heart was going like mad, and yes, I said yes, I will, yes.
Whoa, this is quite something. This is the first time. Usually here we make noise. We take these things out and make noise, and we sing, and we shout, we play music, and we whatever. This is the first time we've attempted a literary event, and by the look of it, I think we're kind of stuck with having to do it again, because I would like to thank all of you for being here.
This guy over here who's recording everything.
I would like to thank those who read Steve,
Yeah.
Pilar,
Yeah.
Incarnate, Robert, Carmel, and Jorge.
And yourself.
Before we continue, I would also like to thank Pablo behind the bar. Hey, Pablo! And thank you all for being here. We will do this again, I hope. Thank you all so much for being here. I feel a bit nervous because I'm not in the slightest bit academic. I'll tell you a story. When I lived in London, I remember once doing a gig in the University of East London, and I remember being on stage and going, I always told me mother I'd come to university. I was just playing in the university bar. Good night, that, by the way. thank you all for being here. We will do this again. Thank you, and thank all those who took part, and those who made an effort to dress up, unlike myself.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
We will do this again, and thank you, particularly Robert and Carmel, for making it possible for this to happen. They gave me the size 9 in the behind to shake me out of a bit of lethargy and doubt.
Who brought
Thank
this?
you.
Was it yourself?
Molly.
Molly.
Money. I will apologise if I've forgotten anyone. Peter.
I would like personally to thank Steve Hughes, who is always backstage of everything that we do at the Circle of Irish Studies, and most of the things that are done are thanks to him. And he came today with all these huge sort of a camera, computer, and Molly yourself. I don't know you. I'm looking forward to meeting you, but I would like to thank that as well. And he did this wonderful finishing reading.
When you let him out front, he's dangerous.
He's truly dangerous. Paula knows. So thanks a million. Anyway.
I'm going to come out for 1 second. Right, thank you very much. I just wanted to say one thing. Firstly, a big thanks to Steve for making this event possible, and to the inspiration of Carmel and Robert for pushing him to do it, for all of the support that we've had for this. I have many students of English language and English literature, and they're all afraid of James Joyce, and they're afraid of Ulysees. Admittedly, it can be quite daunting, but hopefully we haven't put people off today. We tried to bring it a little bit to life, but just know that James Joyce is possible. Ulysees is, I can rank it among the best book that I have of modern literature in my library. Give it a go. Don't be put off by what other people say about it. Give it a go. James Joyce, Ulysees, it's worth reading. So thanks again for everybody and for all of your kind regards. Cheers.
Here, here, here.
James Joyce, conclusion. Easy reading.
I found actually this interesting.